there is time available, yes.
I looked at it, and it was open. But I don't know if my favorite here. Here. Yeah, you want to.
I mean, I already and the thing I sent, take that.
Yeah, so the good date.
There are four, but one has two sides, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, one of mine was.
Oh, it's in print on those sides?
Yeah, that's why I thought it was.
Oh, I gave you the original.
We have 12 instruments, guys. Yeah, Mel almost broke our printer the other night trying to print out her instrument schedule. Yeah, it's in 3 of the people.
Okay, cool. So wait, I'm like rereading it.
It's not on me about fire, it's on facilities.
Yeah, I didn't think it would be.
No, that's where we're down to it, that's it, has contact with facilities.
Actually, like, the things, because how you have it in a piece is considered a weapon. And you're not. So it's even not required. So if it's approved, we can put it in our class every night. Okay. At least for that one.
Yeah, the fire is also a weapon that is 13. That is probably fine. Yeah. So that was that. It's now, this is my argument. This is my argument of what's happening is that Roberta is chopping wood.
Everybody likes my photos.
And using that same wood to stoke a fire in the fireplace that they found.
Very true.
I got it. I understand where you're going with that. Well, I don't know if I understand the version. I understand.
What's your Instagram?
The practical application. Yeah.
Really? No, I did stretch for like.
Do we have a light for Roberta?
Oh, yeah.
Light for doing session and
Right. I think there's gonna be enough ambient lighting that it's kind of like the whole thing's gonna go off, but yes.
take a picture of that.
Look, really, I printed this out today. I have. What? So I could like look at it and like if I need to restructure, Rosanna and I haven't even talked about what I say.
Okay.
Obviously, it's a little less.
Very Madonna thing, you're like. Scissors and then like double. You're thinking of. And you're like, oh, is this one forward? Is it actually?
Right.
No, vote on the 23rd. That's Monday through Wednesday. Wednesday, go to close the meeting.
Well, no, it's yeah. There's more for me. Yeah.
I do. I made it returning something.
Just needing.
Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing? That good, huh? Yeah. Oops. Excuse me for 1 second. Hi, Serby.
Hi, Matthew.
So Serby is with us online. I believe John is in the middle of a slow-going load-in at his school, so he's not with us. A couple of announcements. I'm still waiting on those swatch books, but I will have them on Monday. So if you want to pick them up, you can come by my office. We have to end class early today at 4:15. I need to go to a meeting with a choreographer. And just a reminder, next week, I'm meeting just with the dance students. The theater students are off because it's opening night. And the following week, the dance students are off. I urge the dance students to go see the play, at least part of it. And the dance students. Sorry, Hannah.
Hannah, that was totally Hannah.
Literally, that's like the best thing ever.
But not to be repeated.
What is your target? The joke was meant to go for at least 2 for. Oh.
And the theater students, I'd like you to go to the dance concerts, which are 3 weekends from this coming weekend, I believe.
Mother's Day weekend.
Mother's Day weekend. I always forget about Mother's Day because we never celebrated it when I was growing
Is
up.
it super long? The theater, I actually really want to go see it.
It's too long right now. They're hoping to get it down to like 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's probably about like 2:30 to 2:45.
Okay, so we are getting close to the end of the semester when you will all be making oral presentations and turning in your final projects, which is basically the entire work that you have done this semester. So if you have questions, now is the time. I am going into Tech Week, followed by another Tech Week, so I am not going to be that available for meetings. So I urge you to bring your questions into class, either today or the next time I see you. Clear on how to take their concept into a light plot. You guys know what that is. I want to be sure the theater students are clear, because that's the hardest step when you try to turn your piece into an actual light plot. I may be, send me an email. I may be able to see you Monday or Tuesday. Okay. Does anybody want to talk about concepts? I thought they were very interesting last week. KJ and Relly and Hannah, I believe, spoke about their concepts. Anybody else?
Can I go?
Okay.
So
Can I-
1 second, Jenny's talking. Sorry, sir.
I'm doing the play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, which is basically like a weird version of like Hamlet, in which like the 2 characters are in Hamlet. Their like plot is focused on, but basically it's like 2 characters are not really getting anywhere in their dialogue, and just like their motivation is really kind of existential play. So like my concept, they have a student, but it's really just like reality is subjective, and like who we believe we are isn't like really who we are. Like that nothing is like ever true, and that like the notion of the playwright kind of takes this idea because like kind of like by the end of the play, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, it almost seems like they realize that they're in a play, and it kind of like made me think of like Hughes's watchmaker theology, which is basically the idea that like God creates the universe like somebody would create a watch and you just like set it and like it all like kind of plays out. And I saw like God being like the playwright, and so existential, not reality is subjective, but an idea going on.
Well, I think reality is subjective is a very strong statement in terms of a lighting design, because that can really lead you from realistic lighting into very subjective or impressionistic lighting and playing with that. And also the God concept, can be played out in lighting as well. Basically this play, if you ever get a chance to see it, it's really funny. It's really a great play. Do you imagine that there's any set? If you go on Google Images and look at sets for Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, you see every kind of set imaginable, because it's kind of anything goes.
I was just planning on having this in one level,
Uh-huh.
so where other people would enter and exit, and then barrels that are in the glass half, and on the side, and I don't know if it's after move, but that's so they're on stage and not, but yeah, just like that. Wow.
Great. So something really minimal, and the scenery will not get in the way of the lighting instruments.
Yeah.
Seems like. Okay, great. Anybody else want to talk about their piece? Surabhi, you wanted to talk about your piece?
Can you all hear me?
I'm going to turn you towards the class. You need to speak very loudly.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Hi. Hey, Sarvi.
Hey. Sorry. Hello?
We're here.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
I've actually chosen a Indian classical dance piece. It's called Hara. It is actually on a mythological story on Shiva. So the whole dance is very specific and flows in the storyline. And my concept for this piece in terms of lighting is to define space. So like theater, when there's a specific story that is being conveyed, in theater, they usually use sets and scenic elements. But in this piece, there are no sets at all. But yet there are different spaces that have to be specified. Like Shiva lives in Kailasa mountain, which is filled, it's filled with snow, and there are many peaks in the background. And from there, there's another space that is on Earth filled with greenery and a palace. So there are a lot of scenic elements in the story which are not on stage, and I want to bring that space, differentiate and define that space through lighting.
Okay. We lost part of what you were saying because of the connection.
Oh, sorry.
Not your fault. So I just want to be, I think I'm pretty clear that you want to use the lighting to define different spaces.
Mm-hmm.
That is almost, it's an artistic choice, but it's somewhat of I think we need more in terms of the concept, in terms of what is it about that space, rather than I'm just going to use these colors or these angles to define the space.
So the two space, one of it is really, like I said, it's a snow-peaked mountain. At the same time, it's heaven-like. First of all, we consider Shiva as one of the gods in our mythology, and the space described in that dance is heavenly, and the beautiful with there's a beautiful lake called Manasa Sarovar, and the beauty of it, everything is described in the dance. And at the same time, when this story is about Shiva and Parvati, and how Parvati is from a palace down in the earth, and she, when she marries Shiva, she moves to the Kailas. But she separates from her husband to visit to her parents, and there there's a how do I say? It's offering through yagna. What do I call it that way? So offering through a fire sacrifice. That will be going on. It's called yagna, where they'll be offering several things to the fire, and she would want to visit them. So when she goes there, because Shiva isn't a king, or he doesn't own anything, so her Parvati's parents insult Shiva in front of her, and so Parvati herself jumps into the fire. So it's a dramatic story. So I want to bring that differentiation of the divine heavenly setting and the palace where the her sacrifice into the fire, and how that divine setting transforms into revenge.
So Surpi, just be sure that your design really tells the story, and that you're revealing the thematic aspects of the piece as well as just the literal aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I mean, I think you're almost there, but I think you need to dig a little bit deeper, or else maybe communicate it in a different way. You may already have the ideas, but it's not communicated in a way that's really going to help you with design.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody have any comments for Surabhi? Okay. Okay. So no questions about final projects? All right. So one of the things I want to do today is finish off the lighting design process. We have started from the beginning, and you are going all the way to the point of designing a hookup and writing a few cues. So you basically have your play, but I did want to show you some paperwork that you would be exposed to as a lighting designer, which you are not required to do as your final project, but things that you will find when you do go out there and light shows. So let me talk about the cue sheet. So last week I gave everybody a copy of a cue sheet for one cue, where you write in the levels and the colors you're using for one cue. Generally, the lighting designer also has a cue sheet. The cue sheet lists all the cues, just as it says here, the number of the cue, when that cue is taken, what happens in the cue, and specific notes about it. And one of the things that's really important, especially if you know that your play or dance piece is going to be continue after that you're working on, is this needs to be updated as you go along, so that when you go to the next place to perform it, this is accurate, and you'll be able to recreate the design that you started with. So this can be as detailed or simple as you want. It just depends if you as a designer have the information here. You have enough information here so that you can sit down at the light board and program it, or you can sit and have your programmer program the show for you. The other thing is, and this is actually from a dance concert. In dance, unless you're doing like a story ballet or something like that, this actually becomes the script for the show because the stage manager is calling the cues from an action on stage or possibly from a piece of music. So it needs to be extremely detailed. The stage manager could never, ever call a show from this because it doesn't have enough detail. But it gives you the idea, an idea of what kind of action. Stage manager would see that on stage, and then they tell the light board operator go so they can run the light cues. So that's something else that you would be exposed to as a lighting designer. Now the other things I wanted to show you are basically different versions of a plot. So got the light plot, and we talked about a channel hookup. The information on the channel hookup is exactly the same as what's on the light plot. It's a way of looking at what's on the plot by channel. So another form that we use is an instrument schedule, which is necessary when you are hanging and focusing the show. Once again, this is the same information as the light plot. There's nothing new here. It's just organized in a different way. If this had enough information on it, the master electrician could give you, and as an electrician, give this to you, and you could go up and hang the show. Usually the information here needs the measurement from the center line to do that. This is also the start of that. So this is for the electrician. Once again, it is the same information that's on a light plot. It's nothing new. Then you have two versions of a magic sheet. This is also the same information that's on a light plot. It's not anything new. I've shown you two different versions of a magic sheet. This is the one that's used a lot that I believe Danielle devised. And so when you are lighting the show, once again, when you are sitting in rehearsals, tech rehearsals or dress rehearsals, you cannot pull out the light plot and look and see which instrument you need to see what level you need to bring it to. You need a quick reference, and that's exactly what this is. The positions are at the top, channel numbers are inside. Where it says G at the bottom, that refers to group. And when on a light board, to make it easier, if you wanted to bring up, say, all the low shins, all of channels 1 through 8, it's a lot easier to put it in a group. So you put it in a group. That's just a programming device that's on the board, just so you're not surprised with what that is.
So we should make something like this.
You're not required to do that for this project because you guys are doing a hookup, and it's the same. It is this is just a condensed version of a hookup. One thing that's not on here and is generally on a magic sheet is they generally have arrows in the direction that the light is focused. We don't really need this information on the magic sheet for the dance concerts at St. Mary's because it's very straightforward and we don't need to see the arrows. So that takes me to the other magic sheet, which came out of the textbook. This is a magic sheet for Playboy of the Western World. So this magic sheet is done by areas. I think it was 2 weeks ago, we talked about areas and assigning channels. And we talked about areas 1 through 15 on the Lefevre stage. So here you've got area A, downstage, right? So you've got 5 across, then 5, then upstage you've got 4. So there are 14 areas here. So this magic sheet tells you the direction of the light, the channel of the light, and the color of the light. So you see number 1 down there in the corner, area A. Everybody see where it says channel 1? So it's pointed in the direction of the angle of the light. So the arrow is like this. That means the instrument is focused in the same direction. And then the number on top of that area is the color. So that's the magic sheet for these areas. And then you can see up here, like with the windows and the cyc lights, he indicated which lights were coming from the top. I'm not exactly sure what he means, but he says cyc lights top, but it looks like they're coming from the bottom. So anyway, so there's a window on the set, so same thing. Here's the window, the lights that are coming through the window, channels 164 and 165 are coming through the window. And then you've got the colors there are 64 and 79. I'm not really sure what these arrows refer to, the ones that are pointed right to the window. Maybe somebody standing in front of the window. The lighting designer would certainly know what that is. So just so you know that the other word for a magic sheet is a cheat sheet. So that's what it is. It's a cheat so you can see your entire show. And you need to have everything on it. I have never seen a magic sheet for a Broadway show. I imagine it's always on a computer and never printed out. I can't imagine what it would look like. But we're actually going to watch a movie in a little while, and maybe we'll find out a little bit more about that. So everybody clear on these kinds of paperwork, none of which you need to submit as part of your final project? Okay, great. I'm not going to talk at all about the different ways you can program a light cue, but just know that there are all different kinds of ways you can light a light cue. You're basically writing cues, you're assigning the color and the intensity to each channel, and then you're saying, bring that light up or bring that light down on a certain count, which you put on the top of your individual cue sheets. But just know on a lighting, you can split those up. There's ways you can link them to other cues. There's a multitude of ways you can program. That's not just the lights coming up and going down all at the same time. Does anybody have any questions? So with the magic sheet, there's not one right way to do it. It's your tool as a lighting designer. So because of my age, I generally need things that are bold. So I generally have a lot of, you'll notice I'll have a lot of light around the lighting console when I'm working so that I can see everything. But when I do a magic sheet, I often do mine with a Sharpie just so I can see it. So that's my version of a magic sheet. It's your tool. There's no one right way to do it. These are two of the typical ways of doing it. The other thing I wanted to talk about are the different kinds of lighting rehearsals, and I know a lot of you have been through these, but I know you've all been through these, but some of you may have just been on the stage and not known what's going on back at the light board. So I just want to go over those. So the first thing I want to mention is the lighting. Actually, do I want to mention that first? Excuse me. So I'm just going to, or in this book they call it a level set. The lighting designer will have noted the position of any motivated or unmotivated lighting cue that he or she may want to use in the production. The designer will have discussed these cues with the director during one of the production conferences. The extent of this discussion varies greatly. Some directors want to know the exact location, purpose, and function of every cue. will leave the matter entirely up to the lighting designer. So here at St. Mary's, we always have those meetings, and they're called paper techs. And lots of theaters have them, and I would recommend if you go to light a show that you insist on having a paper tech. I think it'd be very difficult if you have a limited amount of time to not do a show without a paper tech. So the lighting designer, stage manager, director are all in the same room. They're deciding where in the script the cues are happening and assigning those numbers. Any of our stage managers want to chime in on that? We have a lot of stage
Oh, I was gonna
managers here.
say, and the sound designer is there.
Yeah, and the sound designer is complicated set changes. They are often there as well. Basically for anything that changes often in the show.
I will
So
say they are helpful when your designer doesn't change every cue. Because that happened to me this past time, is we had a dry tech and then he changed every single cue, every single location up. So,
how did you even know what number to call?
what do you mean?
Well, if you didn't have a paper tech.
No, we had one and
Oh,
it
you-
wasn't useful because he didn't do his job.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes it's out of your hands, but,
And what didn't he do?
he had no idea what he was doing with every cue. He just arbitrarily decided cues were happening in places.
Mhm. Okay. So you as lighting designer have to be very prepared before you come into the paper tech.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Usually it's really helpful though.
Any questions on what a paper tech is? Okay,
Oh, and usually they don't have it in dance.
that's true. They do not generally happen in dance. I think part of that is because the script for dance is also the lighting cue sheet. So all the information is already there,
I think it's
like
really
this
hard-
kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to do without dancers.
Without
Sometimes you need all
dancers,
the
right.
dancers to be like, this is the way I want it to happen, and sometimes it's hard.
Right. You could do that looking at a video that generally the stage manager, like Kate's going to be, she's going to be, I'm the lighting designer, so I need to come up with the scripts and I'll give them to Katie. I will try to describe the movement. Sometimes difficult. But Katie will watch the videos to the point that she knows exactly where those light cues come. So yes, Shirley's absolutely right. It's not generally done in dance. We're talking about contemporary dance now, not big classical ballets. Okay, so you have the paper tech, when was that paper tech for this show, Elizabeth? Last week?
Paper tech was back from right.
Okay. So it was the first week in April. Then the lighting designer goes and he programs the board, or if you are a higher paid lighting designer who can have a lighting programmer with you, they will program the board. And then the next thing that's happened is called a dry tech. This book is called The Lighting Rehearsal, also known as a level set. But I think a lot of people are used to the word dry tech. Has anybody ever heard it referred on the theaters and dance companies you guys have worked at? Has anybody ever used, well, we don't usually have dry techs for dance, but did they use that same terminology in Sacramento? Katie, do you have any idea? Never heard it?
Well, in music service, those are very different. They have a dry tech without the stage manager. Yeah. So what they dry tech is what we would, so like, what are we talking about? Like, in theater, you have your stage manager, director, lighting designer, and sound designer. You sit with like the script, and the lighting designer goes, this is where I want the cue. The stage manager writes it in the book. Sound designer says, this is where I want the cue. Right? But Katie and I both work at the same theater in SAC. And because the rehearsal process is so fast, the lighting designer physically takes his like script from him and puts all the cues in themselves. Sit back.
Takes it from the stage manager.
Because there's multiple, like the ASM has the same exact copy as the stage manager does, so they use the ASM's copy during rehearsal. And because like Craig doesn't have the stage manager doesn't have time to sit there and write them in himself, so they do it for him.
Okay, and so the director's seeing the lights for the first time during a tech rehearsal. Okay,
And then he just yells,
okay.
typically.
So yes, that's always the way it is in dance. The first time that the choreographer sees the light cues is during it's not exactly summer stock in Sacramento, but similar, or you opening a show every week or every 10 days or every 2 weeks and don't have time to do it. This is a fairly common practice, the way we do it. The theaters that are around the Bay Area, you would find that they have some version of a dry tech beforehand. So tomorrow is the dry tech for Impure Thoughts, which is the show we're doing. Due to difficulties with scheduling, we're dry teching the lighting cues, followed by dry teching the sound cues, which we can do with the show because there are very few sound cues. But the director, Rebecca, will get to see the light cues and make comments on them, and they make changes. And she will listen to the sound cues, and they will make changes to those first. If you don't do that before a tech rehearsal with the entire company, you're going to waste a lot of time. Tech rehearsals are slow enough, even with having a dry tech, but if you don't have dry techs beforehand, it really slows things down. And of course, at dry tech, you don't have all the actors in costume doing what they do. You may have 2 people who are representing the entire company. So of course, you're doing your best guess of what it's going to look like. And then you make your changes at the first tech rehearsal. Okay, so tech rehearsals are rehearsals where whether you're doing a cue to cue or you're doing a full tech rehearsal, you're going through the show with the entire cast and crew, adding the sound and lights that you looked at during the dry tech. Did you say something?
No, I lost connection. I reconnected.
Okay, good. So that's a tech rehearsal. When you add costumes to that, it's a dress rehearsal. And then after that, in a lot of theaters, you go into previews. We're not going to talk about that. We'll talk about that in stage management class. Anyway, theaters like Shotgun and other theaters around here, I'm Berkeley Rep and ACT, all have preview rehearsals. We don't have them here. So we have tech rehearsals, then dress rehearsals with costumes, and then the show opens. And you run for as many performances as you're going to. One other thing I wanted to mention, also a lot of you know about this. So before you actually start a tech rehearsal or a dress rehearsal or a performance, the electricians need to do an instrument check. And this is what an instrument check is. So a check of equipment should be conducted before each technical or dress rehearsal, and each performance. All dimmers and instruments need to be checked to determine that they are functioning properly. With the aid of a channel hookup sheet, which you guys all know what that is, more crew members can test all the instruments and dimmers in a short time. An electrician turns on each channel, and the lights are checked to see that all the instruments assigned to it are functioning properly. At the same time, the person checking the fixtures can see if any of the color has bleached out or torn or burned through and needs to be replaced, if there are any lamps that are burned out and need to be replaced. And each instrument should also be tested to determine if it is focused in its assigned focus area. Especially important in dance, where the most important lighting instruments are the side lights, and the dancers are going on and off stage right next to your most important instruments, and it's very easy for them to get knocked. and you need to be sure that they're precise. One other thing that I want to add to this, I've talked about this to stage managers, but basically want to talk about it to lighting designers as well. You need to be sure that the masking for the show is where it's supposed to be. It's often forgotten. So if you are the lighting technician or the designer or the stage manager, you need to look at the stage and be sure the masking is on spike, because it can make a huge difference, and you never know what's going to happen in the theater during the day. So I urge you to take on that responsibility as lighting designers. Okay, so I wanted to hear from the stage managers in the room, of which we have many, 5, 6, maybe more, 7 stage managers. I don't know. KJ, you've probably stage managed too. So we have maybe 3 or 4 people who haven't stage managed. I'd like to hear from you guys in terms of what you expect from a lighting designer, what you want in a lighting designer, how the communication goes. If anybody has any feedback on that, I'd be interested to hear it. Excuse me?
In general?
Yeah. Okay. So
We don't have lots.
you will, well, we're going to watch this film actually in a very few seconds. But the lighting designer is the last designer who adds stuff to the show. They have to put their design element at the last minute. So they're often under a lot of pressure. I don't care how much pressure you're under, you as the lighting designer, like a stage manager, always need to maintain your cool and be of good spirits. It can get really tense, but you can't show your tension. You have no right to speak to anybody, no matter who they are, without being completely polite. Anybody want to add anything more specific than that? Please go ahead, Relly. You look like the.
I'm good. The more discussions that lighting designers have, or we get to technology, the better. I feel like, because then we're not in endless discussion of this Amber versus that Amber. Just to really slow stuff down. So if they've sort of met and talked through a lot of the design elements or like the concept beforehand.
So you're talking about concept or looking at cue sheets or actually looking at light cues?
I mean, I think like kind of all of them. I mean, as much as possible in terms of the actual design itself. So then the light tweaking is fairly limited.
Uh-huh,
I work on the very tight schedule.
right. And a lot of us work in theaters where the lighting designer and board are the same person. And that is true in lots and lots of dance companies until you get more money and step up there. So,
I'd say before St. Mary's, before I came to St. Mary's, choreographer, all I really wanted, I wanted the lighting designer just to make it look good. I didn't have design ideas. So I actually think there's probably a lot. Well, I don't know if there's a lot. Maybe I was just young in it and I didn't care that much, or I didn't think about the components of lights. Except for maybe I'd have some one idea or something, or something, you know, I'd have a couple of ideas that I wanted to do, but I didn't understand design concepts. Now through this program, I feel like I will have a different relationship with lighting designers because I will understand the value of, I'll probably communicate differently with lighting designers in the future. There's
That's
probably
great.
a spectrum when you're a lighting designer with people you work with. Probably some people who really just don't care or don't know, you know, just want you to make it look good. And they won't give you very many directions. And
Mhm.
probably some people will give you way more than you would have liked.
Right.
I think that's a mark of a good designer though, because I think a lot of choreographers don't have that kind of education and don't know how to begin a conversation with a lighting designer. And that's like, so for instance, Matthew gave us that example, like questions that you can engage with a choreographer. Anyone should be able to answer those type of questions. And so I think it's kind of like to initiate those conversations and to show up at rehearsals and be like, I really want to like talk to you about it, because if they don't, then they can end up with a design that they might think is good, and the choreographer can sit back and go like, well, crap, that's not what I wanted, but I didn't know how to voice that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, extremely important to find a common language, and I think that's why I've mentioned a number of times, don't be scared to make a fool of yourself and ask questions, especially when somebody uses a word that can have so many definitions. You need to say, well, what does God mean to you? You know, you need, or what does pretty look to you? You have to have those kind of conversations because, you know, that's a million different things. The other side of it is, and I'm right in the middle of this now, lighting the dance concert that's coming up. As a lighting designer, generally the lighting designer is the most important designer to a choreographer. Lighting designers are to choreographers as scenic designers are to directors. And choreographers really benefit from these conversations I have with lighting designers. I've had at least 2 of the designers this week, when talking about their piece, they had to start defining for themselves so they could explain to me what was happening in their piece. And during that process, they go like, oh, you know what? I don't think that's very clear, so I'm going to change that in my choreography. So you really have a lot to offer as a lighting designer, and it can be a fantastic relationship. And as I've mentioned, when choreographers find lighting designers they will work with them forevermore.
I would also throw in over here, because we had this problem, is staying. As we had the ring mishap, where the lighting designer didn't say anything until we checked about the rings, and we all kind of, I mean, Matthew put it too, but we all were like, okay, and then we had to like have a meeting, but it would have been much better probably to have talked about that earlier. And it brought it, and it was, I think it's just a miscommunication between him and the other Matthew, and it would have alleviated some stress I have with that. And we wouldn't have had to deal with the rings again.
Yeah.
The set, just like in general, this set is huge, but staying really in touch with the same designer, they work.
Yeah. And that's the importance of having a lot of production meetings, even though people sometimes hate going to them. Weekly production meetings are highly recommended, and you won't find them when you go out to work in the world, but you can ask for them because they're enormously helpful.
And finding times that everyone can come.
Yeah.
it's hard, I get that, but as someone who went through a process that like half of my designers weren't in half of the production meetings, you deal with shit later on.
Yeah. We had a number of designers who couldn't get to the meetings here, but they all made themselves available by Google Hangout, so we could have that conversation. Okay, I want to show you this film. I'd actually recommended it to the theater students, but I'm not sure how many of you actually watched it. I think very entertaining. It's about lighting Broadway shows. Pretty self-explanatory. So none of this, I tried to find something comparable in the dance world, and of course, there wasn't anything there. It'd be great if one of you wanted to make a great documentary about lighting dance.
designer is using an assortment of lights to frame the stage for the audience to kind of know what's going on in the show. Giving the audience a sense of where they are. Is it daytime, nighttime? Is it weather? Are we in a foggy pond?
We tell the audience where to look. We give them a sense of mood, of atmosphere, of time of day. We help establish an emotional undercurrent, and we're also storytellers. It's really trying to dig deep into the heart of what the characters are doing. It's trying to dig deep into what the story that's being told is.
So now, he's just watched the whole show. Let's do the background. We'll start with Navigator Against the Sky. You won Best Work on the side.
Absolutely.
I must say, the actor is the most important thing on the stage.
Let's warm up the diagonal a little bit. Diagonal.
Very often as lighting designers, we want to kind of rim the actor and kind of set so that we have a foreground and background, because the actor is the one that's telling the story. And then we're helping to tell that story.
What else do we have up here? We can throw a little bit of text here. Kind of a cloudy thing. Anything you could do with that?
We've got the other decimal.
Yeah, got some checks.
What's great about that now is that it is a reflected light in Sebastian. I think that's beautiful. Actually, it's so beautiful. I wonder if we can get more of that. I see myself as a dual-fold lighting designer, half sculptor, half painter. I might be in ancient days going, and I just cut away a little blue, and then you see how the costume looks, and it looks a little flat, so you take out one light and then put on another one, and all of a sudden the costume and the character becomes three-dimensional. And then behind them, there might be a background, and that is when I take out my paintbrush and put a little blue behind them. You know what, I'd love to see how and where is it going from daytime to nighttime in 20 counts.
Sure. So, this is Q104, I guess. And then once you go out to sculpting with light is really a major part of our job. Especially the body. So the body needs to be sculpted from the side, from the back. I want the audience to feel like they can hear the story being told. I pride myself in being able to write the story well, being able to really have the audience focus on where the action's taking place, and to be able to follow that thoroughly. Are you ready? So we're going to go dark here.
And next, stand up.
Nice. Go.
This is the air. That is the voice. Look, this pearl she gave me. I do feel it and see it.
Going into designing the show is, I kind of use this word called formatting. And it's a process of hours and days and weeks with a director, set designer, costume designer, kind of formatting our way through the production. We'll have a rough set model, and we'll kind of start on page 1 of the script and kind of work our way through it, one scene at a time. And where's this scene going to be, and what scenery is going to be in it, what part of the stage it's going to be on, and how we transition from getting out of the scene into the fields of hay and things like that.
Pull my down one more time so we're gonna need to, and then when you comfortably are able to get up and stand. Once I'm hired, I read the script, and I read the script without thinking about the light the first time through, so that I can just get a sense of what the script means to me. And then I read it again, and I mark it up with thoughts about the lighting, but sometimes those thoughts are very simple thoughts, like what time of day is it, where does it take place, and the next step is very often
and meeting with the director and talking about the director's feelings about the piece. Because I do believe strongly that my job is really to help the director with the director's vision.
The director is very specific about what he's gonna want in this certain scene. You know, whether the scene's in a kitchen or in a basement, or how he feels about how it should be lit, whether it's just a little light coming through the window and, you know, it's a very dark and gloomy scene with just one lamp over the table. That's a chemistry to me that kind of tells me as a designer how to layer into his vision of the scene. Good, thank you. Good job.
One of the biggest challenges is making sure that we're able to get lights where we want them, because if we don't, we really can't make the show look good. Another challenge is that everybody else who's working on the project, the set designer, the costume designer, the choreographer, they all have done their work beforehand. So the choreographer has done the work in the rehearsal hall, the director's done the work in the rehearsal hall. When we walk into the theater, we're the only ones who sit down with a completely blank white piece of paper, a completely empty, nothing is done yet.
All the lighting equipment, the cabling, the dimmers, all the headsets, I mean, it's really down to the ironing boards. There's, you know, I mean, everything has to go in for production. We established a shop order, which is sent out to vendors to get a bid back, and sometimes we have to change equipment that we kind of wanted, or we have to substitute this or that. But then, after that's all approved by the general managers, we start finalization of all the paperwork that's necessary for the show to go into the lighting shop. That's where the electricians take our paperwork and they get all the equipment that's on the plot and they mount it. The entire package is rented.
Joseph Hackney's world's largest spirit. All right. Because in single design specifications and shop order, now we take paper, turn it into light, give them all they hear, lay it out, prep it, they mark it, location, dimmer, and they put it in the box, and then they'll put it on the truck and load it into the theater cars. And we have, no one else in the world is really it's how we prep our little lights. We'll take out human error, and show you how we do that. Everything's a story in the other. Millions. Color chips. It's Friday. Just happens.
Wow.
You actually can hold it up to the light and see.
Okay. Millions of choices.
That is incredible.
Is that incredible?
First of all, we go to the ERG to look at new equipment, but if there are things that we want to do in a show that have never been done before, a demo room is an amazing place to do that. Can you say that I had just been there 2 weeks before working on ballet, where we needed to see different kinds of material, how they took light, because we were going to project some snow on 3 different surfaces. We wanted to make sure we could see to one surface, to the next surface, to the next surface. So if you didn't go to the demo room, and then you had all the scenery built for thousands and thousands of dollars, and then you found out that you actually couldn't see through each row, then it saves the producers a lot of money, and it saves us the anxiety because we know that it's going to work. Costume
deeply affect the money design of the show. Because what I have to make sure is that I make the costumes look the color that the costume designer wants them to look. Sometimes I'll even take the fabric back with me and pick different colors based on the color of the fabric or how the fabric takes light, just so that I know that I can give the purity of what the costume looks like in terms of color and feel.
You know, we're always experimenting, we're exploring new layers, new elements, new types of light, new types of sound. So there's a great collaboration between all departments throughout the course of putting a show together.
I don't think that lighting has to be more spectacular on Broadway. I think the most important thing really is the show and the storytelling. But I guess, okay, I'll admit it, yes, we push it a little bit and try to make it a little more spectacular. What are you doing things like that? Anything like this, anything that, what that drop looks like. The consistency of it, the glow and the glow.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. Well, I was just wondering that, I don't know what that was, but just color that yellow was so pretty.
we should go to one of these, you can't forget that Aladdin is a fairy tale, and there's a lot of color in the scenery, and there is a lot of color in the lighting. It was all about sort of heightening reality into a kind of fantasy world. So the hope was to really make the audience feel like they were living in a fantasy. There is something about the adrenaline of working on Broadway because money is so tight that you have to work quickly and fast and hard, and it's almost like working out. It's almost like playing a sport. Let's see what you think of this.
Yeah. There's
Okay, so you feel like that's romantic, because that's really what I was hoping, that you would find that would be romantic. So you sort of feel that way.
going from the energy and the hot feeling of this wildly crazy, energetic number to just this beautiful romantic.
Yeah, and this also, I wanted to feel a little bit like her too, because he's
It does.
great.
He's the orange and she's the pink.
And there you go, okay, good.
Yeah.
No, it's great, and it's very often, we're responding so much in what the other people are doing that I forget myself sometimes. Because there's so many people that are in the room that you want to make sure that, as a lighting designer, that they're all taken care of. The set looks good, the costumes look good, the dance. Sometimes we just have to let ourselves go and go with our heart and gut and emotion. I'd love to look at the buildings lit up, and then if you do that, that'd be great.
Can you bring up the grammar points?
I think myself as a chameleon in many ways. I do believe that my job is to respond to the rest of the collaborative team. So I think as the years have gone on, there might be something that I do that makes me Natasha Katz. I don't know what those words would be, and I don't even know how to look back and think about what my style is, because I believe my style is the style of a chameleon and working with other people. And go to Q Next. Oh, but that's kind of pretty. And go to Q Next. I was not born with the dream of wanting to be a lighting designer. I was born with the dream of wanting to work in the theater. I was definitely born with the dream of wanting to work on Broadway, and I was definitely born with the dream of wanting to work on musicals and plays. So when I went to Oberlin College, I worked in all sorts of backstage in the theater, and then I got a full semester's credit to work with somebody in New York City. So I worked with a lighting designer because I just started to do a little bit of lighting in college, and it started to appeal to me. And I worked on a show called I Remember Mama at the Majestic Theater right across the street from here. And the minute I walked into the theater, walked through the stage door, I was hooked. And go to Q Next. It was really on-the-job training for me. Go to Q Next. Go to Q Next. I had met so many people working on the show that a lot of people asked me to work with them. So I just continued to work and work and work. I was 25 years old.
I grew up in North Carolina, and at a young age, I began working at the Roadhouse where all the road shows would come in. And took a big interest in just watching how all the lighting packages came off the trucks and were set up in the theater. And just as a young kid, I was like 10, 11 years old, and this was very fascinating to me how this lighting package could just come off a truck and get set up, and then the performers would come in that afternoon and the show that night. And then we took it all down, packed it on the truck, and they left, and we were back to Bear Theater. I've been told that people say that Howell Bickley has a signature in his lighting. The more I'm thinking about it, I think I do kind of like things that have a Bickley signature to it. I kind of use a high side angle that I find myself using in a lot of shows, and it's a sculpting technique which works very well for me. You see how this changes colors? Just simple sets, you know, and here we have a whole entire show done on this one set. It's not like a lot of drops flying in and out, you know, it's just one area. And my job in this show is really to dissect this whole show, to really frame it in a way where there's many locations throughout the course of the 50 songs that are in the show. Each song kind of has a new location, a new time of day, a different feel, whether it's this song is a memory song for the actor to convey to the audience what's going on during the lyrics of the song. You know, transferred from off-Broadway up to Broadway for Hamilton, the major change that I had to do was that off-Broadway, the ceiling from the stage floor to the grid was only like 16 feet. And moving to, we had 28 feet, and so that meant that I had to change lighting fixtures. We had to incorporate some fixtures into the move that weren't really a theatrical lighting fixture, more kind of a rock and roll light that I knew that it was kind of like the only source that was going to work for the show. I think the success of the show is just from how different the show actually is. It's a historical show, and it's really, you know, depicting our history. And I just think the technique of the show is quite different, and was just generating a new type of theater. It's introducing that to the audiences. You keep going through some things. The technology has changed lighting over the last 20 years incredibly. A lot of the old conventional units were a fixed unit. It would just, you plug it in, focus it, and really have one job. You know, it would take, 100 fixed lights to do what one automated light fixture can do now.
A huge change was moving lights, where you don't have to get up on the ladder to focus the light. We go to moving light programmers, and we say to them, I'd like a blue light on that piece of scenery, and it's done remotely through a computer. In the old days, when I started, you had to roll the ladder out, you had to go to the light, you had to move the light, you had to put a gel in the light. If you wanted a new color, you had to get the ladder out, roll it out, go back up the ladder, change the color of the light, which would take time in the middle of rehearsal and time in the morning. And now we don't have to do that anymore because we have these lights that are remote controlled. That's an enormous change in our business.
Just great photo work. Let's just go back photo work on stage.
The short version of the history of lighting design is that the greatest lighting designer, I guess, is nature, Mother Nature, or whatever you want to call it, because it was all done in the outside by sunlight, and then it was all done by firelight. And then as we started to move indoors after Shakespeare's time, then we were able to start to control the light. On Broadway, when it started, there was no credit for a lighting designer. The set designer did it with the electrician. As the years went on, it became its own profession. And for many years, actually, it was a profession that was really sort of dominated by women. There was somebody called Jean Rosenthal who really changed lighting in the sense that she figured out a way to do paperwork so that lighting could be repeated over and over again, because how do you record lighting? So Jean Rosenthal is sort of the grandmother of us all.
I don't want the audiences to feel like it's just a light show. It's a juggling act to balance between the knowledge of the mechanics and the creativity as well.
Art has to drive the technical. We have to use all this technology as tools for what our vision is.
And so, and make it feel like the rain is pouring against you. And I like it a little bit, yeah. So the rain is torrentially pouring against you. And when it flashes, you're worried that you're gonna get inside. Or you could die. Okay.
Okay, and go for it. Start running.
Now move forward and go stage right a little bit. You're going against the wind, it pushes you back stage left. Oh my God. But your daughter is waiting for you.
Love it.
So far back stage left.
So I'm starting to spend more dance there. Natasha Katz is actually a lighting designer who's worked over and over again with her several years.
Like if there was gonna be.
Okay, everybody, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy? No. I know. And I almost had to go like, I'm